I had been a field medic for 19 years before the salvage board reassigned me to derelict clearance. It was not a demotion, they called it by name, but everyone on the Sethran station knew what it meant. You sent tired men to dead ships. You sent men whose hands still worked, but whose nerves had gone a little quiet, who no longer flinched at the smell of a sealed compartment or the sound of a bulkhead settling in cold vacuum. I was that man. I did not argue. The hulk they called Calorn's wake had been drifting in the outer lane of the Mareth Shelf for 912 years. The station logs had it flagged as a pre-accord vessel, class unknown, drive dead, life support dead, core dark. 3 salvage teams had boarded it in the last 40 years. 2 had found nothing worth pulling. 1 had tried to interface with the AI core and lost a technician to the discharge. Not dead, but the man's hands never fully closed again after that. So the board sent me, a medic, not to interface, only to check the med lockers in the aft crew quarters and see if the pharmaceutical stocks were still sealed and viable. Colony worlds on the shelf were running low on broad-spectrum coagulants. I was there for bandage supplies. That was the whole of it. I suited light. No hard exo, just a pressure layer and the helmet. The docking clamp on Calorn's wake was corroded past use, so I cut the manual seal and pulled the hatch by hand. The air that came out was not stale, so much as ancient. Not rot, not death, just the smell of a place that had been waiting a very long time with nothing left to do. The interior was dark except where the shelf's pale star leaked through 3 breech panels in the outer corridor. I moved by helmet lamp. The geometry of the ship was old pattern, nothing I recognized from the current fleet manuals. Wider corridors than modern builds, lower ceilings, curved wall paneling that had a quality of care to it, like whoever designed it had wanted the crew to feel held rather than contained. Even under the grime and the cold, I could see it. Someone had built this ship for the people inside it, not the other way around. The med lockers were where the log said they would be, 3rd door aft of the crew commons. I keyed the manual release, and the door gave without argument. The stocks were sealed in resin cast trays, the kind that don't degrade. I counted 8 trays of coagulants, 4 of broad-spectrum antifungals, 2 of neural stabilizers. Better than I had hoped. I loaded them into the carry bag methodically, the way I had loaded field kits 10,000 times, counting by touch, not looking because I was watching the corridor. The AI core housing was at the far end of the same passage. I had no reason to go near it. The board had said specifically, do not attempt interface. I was not attempting anything. I simply walked past it on my way back to the hatch, because the corridor ran that direction and there was no other way. The housing was a column of dark composite set flush into the wall, maybe 1.5 meters tall, with an intake panel at chest height. The panel was cracked along one edge, the seal fractured by 9 centuries of thermal cycling. The crack was wide enough that the panel was torquing slightly outward, and as I passed, I saw that the movement had been stressing a conduit bundle behind it for what must have been years. The insulation was fraying, and if that bundle shorted against the outer housing, it would take the med locker systems with it. The stocks I had just packed would be useless. I set the bag down. It took me 4 minutes to brace the panel back flush using a folded strip of hull tape from my kit and 2 fingers of pressure held steady while the adhesive cured. I was not thinking about the core. I was thinking about the conduit. I was thinking about the 19 children on Mareth Colony who had the bleeding disorder and needed the coagulants in the bag at my feet. My hand rested flat against the intake panel for the full 4 minutes because that was what the repair required. That was all. The warmth started at my palm. It was not the warmth of a discharge. I have felt a live circuit discharge, and it announces itself with a sound, a sharpness, a wrongness. This was the opposite. This was the warmth of something that had been cold a very long time and was now, slowly, remembering how to be otherwise. It moved up through my wrist and settled in my sternum, and for a moment I thought I was having a cardiac event. 19 years in the field, you know the signs, you catalog them against yourself first, always. But my heart was steady. My vision was clear. The warmth simply sat in my chest like a hell breath. Then the lights came on. Not bright. Soft blue-white. The color of early morning through a high window. They ran the length of the corridor from the core housing toward the hatch, and they pulsed once, twice, as if testing themselves. The panel under my hand vibrated. Not a seizure, not a surge, just the faint hum of a system coming back from a very long way away. I did not move. I have learned, in 19 years of working on people in the worst moments of their lives, that the most important thing you can do when something fragile is waking up is hold still. The voice, when it came, was not through any speaker I could see. It came through my sternum, bone-conducted, the way a held tuning fork speaks when you press it to the chest wall. Low, even, without strain. The voice of something that was not surprised, only relieved in the way a very old and very patient thing is relieved when the wait is finally done. It said, "Steady, king of the accord line." I stood there with my hand on the panel and my bag of medical supplies at my feet, and I did not speak for what felt like a long time. My name is derelict. I am 53 years old. My mother was a ship's nurse on the Verith run for 31 years. Her mother before her was a field surgeon on the colony transports out of Seth. Before that, her father, then his mother, then a chain of healers and medics and ship's doctors running back through the station records as far as records went, and before the records, into the oral history that my grandmother kept in a small handwritten book I still carry in my inner pocket, a list of names going back 14 generations, all of them tending the sick on ships, in stations, and field camps. In whatever corner of the dark human reach needed hands that knew how to stop bleeding and ease pain. Healers, all the way down. The core spoke again, quieter now, almost gentle. The accord line does not break. 912 years I have held this ship and waited for its healer king to return and authorize the cargo forward. You're the authorization. Speak the release when ready. I did not know what cargo. I did not know what release. But I understood, in the way you sometimes understand a diagnosis before you can name it, when the signs have been in front of you for years and you simply have not assembled them, that my entire lineage had not been coincidence. That every one of those 14 generations had served on ships, because ships were where the work was, yes, but also because the ships themselves had always quietly called to us. The right vessels, the right postings, the right hands on the right surfaces at the right moments. We have been keeping the accord without knowing it had a name. I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I am derelict. I released the cargo forward, delivered to the colony world requiring it most. The warmth in my chest deepened once, like a breath let out. The ship came alive around me in stages. Not the violent resurrection of a system reboot, but the measured, dignified return of something that had simply been asleep and had now been properly woken by the right person saying the right thing in the right way. Lights through the full corridor. A soft sound of ventilation. The faint click of cargo bay, seals releasing in sequence somewhere in the deep hull. I picked up my bag. I walked back to the hatch. I checked my seals out of habit, the way I always did, even when there was no emergency, because habit is what keeps you alive in the long spaces between emergencies. I paused at the threshold and looked back down the lit corridor at the core housing, glowing now with a steady soft blue, patient and permanent. My grandmother's book had 14 names in it. I was going to need more pages. I stepped through the hatch and sealed it behind me, and I carried the coagulants home to Mareth, and I did not tell anyone what had happened inside that ship. Some things you carry quietly. The accord line always had.